Hello everyone, it's Jade from Boho Bookworm and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to my August wrap-up. It's the end of the month already, can you believe it? The very first book that I finished throughout August was Magpie by Elizabeth Day, which I read while on holiday in Portugal. I've got my Portugal travel vlog, which I'll link down below. It was such an incredible holiday. I got a nice little tan, which sadly is already fading as the weather is quickly turning to autumn over here. But wow, this book, it was phenomenal. I absolutely loved it. It's about this couple called Marissa and Jake, and they're like the perfect couple, but they're trying to have this baby and they're struggling to conceive, and to help them out with money they decide to get this lodger in just to have that little bit of extra finances because they start going through like IVF treatment and things like that. So Kate comes in to their lives and kind of just doesn't know any kind of sense of boundaries. She just kind of plants herself right in the middle of everything, and Marissa's starting to realize that Kate's got a bit of like a crush on Jake, but Jake doesn't seem to realize this, and everything's a bit like you don't really know who to trust and what's going on. A very unreliable narrator kind of style. So good. Anyway, so Marissa is just determined to find out who Kate really is and what she really wants. It was such a mind bender. There was just so much about Marissa, her backstory, her inner monologue at the beginning of the book that I just connected with so wholeheartedly. I just cannot tell you how amazing the twists in this book were. It was like, you know, one of those like water park rides that you go on. Like I just went to a water park in Portugal and I almost shat myself. It was that scary. But you know those rides that you go on, there's this like deep drop and you literally scream and swear and like uncontrollably because it's that scary and that shocking. That's the kind of shock I got in this book. I was like, whoa, where did that come from? It is definitely worth knowing going into this book that it does focus heavily on things like fertility, pregnancy, cheating, obsession, and if you're not in the mood for something like that, or if you think that might be a bit heavy hitting for you, it's best to pick this book up when you're in a better mind frame. Especially, you know, I'm at that stage of my life now where I am wanting to start having a family and progress in a different chapter in my life, and the idea that I could potentially be infertile is a scary one. You know, hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm not. I've got nothing to say that I would be, but I've been on the pill for over 16 years, and that is scary to think. What could those side effects be? I just hope that, you know, when I get off it, everything will be okay and I'm not going to have years of struggling to fall pregnant. That is a visceral, deep, horrible fear of mine right now. Yeah, the fertility issues in this book were really hard hitting for me. The author, Elizabeth Day, does have her very own fertility struggles and backstory as well, so it felt very realistic because she was telling it like firsthand, and it just felt very raw and real in that sense. It's a slow burning book for sure, but just so worth it. I mean, it's the perfect holiday book, popcorn read, packed with tension, unputdownable. I thought that it was fabulous, fun, fearless. It had a cast of characters that you just can't trust, and I guess the only thing that shaved a point off for me, because I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, was the ending. It just kind of seemed a bit too perfect in my opinion. But overall, a highly recommended book from yours truly. Then I picked up The Road Trip by Beth O'Leary, and this one was something I was really excited for because every time I took a picture of it on Instagram and put it onto like polls of what book should I read next, this one was just like blown out of the water. It was so hyped up. And I had read The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary, which I absolutely adored as well. I was so excited, and sadly it just fell so flat. It's a book that goes between past and present tense, so dual timelines about characters Addie and Dylan, and they meet at this villa. Addie is working there as like the housekeeper. Dylan's there on his like little holiday, kind of escaping from all of his family drama and all the high maintenance of his wealthy lifestyle. And they fall in love at this villa. And then Dylan's friend comes along and kind of mucks everything up, and then it goes back into the present time where they are now. They've split up, but you're not really sure why, and you kind of have to unearth that story and go back in time and piece things together as to what made them break up, because they seemed to be a good couple, or I guess that's what the book intended you to think. As for myself, I did not think they were a perfect couple whatsoever. I thought that Dylan was the most infuriating of characters besides Marcus, his best friend. he was just this little man-child that had too much money to know what was good for him, didn't know what he wanted in life, was mucking Addie around. She was this hard worker, though there's a lot of issues with her that I'll bring up later as well. Oh, it was just a book that really irritated me. So in present tense, after they've now split up and stuff, they get kind of forced back together because they're both on their way to this wedding at the same place in Scotland, to mutual friends of theirs, and they haven't seen each other for like 2 years or something. So Dylan and Marcus crash into the back of Addie and her sister and end up pretty much like writing off one of the cars, so they all have to squeeze into this little yellow Mini and go on a road trip together to the wedding. And obviously that's super orcs because they split up, and there's a lot of like sexual tension that's quite palpable in this book. So begins this epic road trip story that you're led to believe. It's not epic at all. It's packed with that sexual tension. It's got near rape experiences. There's a stalker somehow thrown in there. There's an agonizing heartbreak plot that you kind of have to try and follow, and a shit ton of breast pumping. I'll be honest and say at first I was enjoying this book, okay? I was on holiday, relaxing by a poolside in Portugal, feet up, sun tanning, getting those vitamin D rays. I was in a villa, so reading about a villa I found quite interesting. I think I was so blissfully unaware of how rubbish this book was that I would have just read anything while I was on holiday, zenned out with gin and tonics in my hand. However, when I continued reading it, when I got back to England, which, okay, the weather was still nice, but I wasn't relaxing by a poolside in a villa any longer, and reality kicked in. I picked up the cracks in this book. I guess the whole plot of this book, the whole concept of it, is about having a second chance of love. And because I hated the main characters together so much, I thought, as Aoife from Words of Clover says, they're completely unsuited for each other. They're mismatched, like a 100%, that I didn't want to root for them having a second chance of love at all. I do remember enjoying The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary. However, I also recall that, like vividly, the male main character, Leon, I believe his name was, really pissed me off in that book too. It was his robotic tone, the way that like the lazy kind of speech that she wrote into the book. And sadly, it just seems to be a bit of a thing in her books to get really pissed off with the male main character. Dylan was just this privileged little white boy, and I'm so happy that I never have to hear about him again, if I can help it. With contemporary romances, you're supposed to be like cheering on for the couple that you're reading about. I was not with Addie and Dylan whatsoever. I don't know how many times I need to reiterate that. With contemporary romance, you're supposed to have that empathy towards them. You're supposed to have that hope that they're going to overcome their hurdles, but I didn't want them back together at all. No. Can you tell yet that this book infuriated me? If not, let me carry on and explain why I didn't like Addie either. So Addie was made out to be this victim of sexual assault, and okay, yes, I would not wish any kind of sexual assault or violence on anyone, not even my worst enemy. Not that I have any enemies, hopefully, but she was in a relationship and she was flirting, consciously putting herself into these daring situations that, yes, it also detailed her guilt for it and stuff, but I just hated her for it. Like, cheating is something that just absolutely kills me. It just destroys every inch of respect and anything I have for a person. It makes me just I'm not saying that she put herself into a situation where she made herself vulnerable enough to be sexually assaulted. No, not at all. But she was leading herself down a very wrong path while she was in a relationship with another man. I get if you're unhappy in your relationship, then break it off. I get if, you know, your relationship isn't giving you that attention that you need. Everyone has issues, right? But just don't cheat. Simple as that. And to me, texting, flirting is cheating. I mean, I didn't even like Dylan, but I hated when he got cheated on by Addie because that's what it was. Cheating is just a huge trigger of mine. So the fact that these kind of thoughts were in her head at all while in a relationship with someone else, it just really angered me and made me feel really uncomfortable with reading the book. I just I was not interested in it. It's not the kind of headspace I ever want to be in. I could never and would never ever cheat on someone. It's not in me. It's not in my bones, my blood, my heart. I don't understand people like that. And yeah, I'm gonna stop now. Let me carry on with other aspects of the book that I also hated. There were a lot of revolting things in this book, such as Dylan using his obviously asshole of a father for his money and being too cowardly to go about life by himself. I mean, I have not had anything from my family for many years. I've made life work for myself. It's been fucking scary at times. I've had no one to fall back on. I have lived in falling down little flats, like scraped by every month. Almost at some points, one Christmas, I think I've got a video of it on YouTube where I was crying, thinking I was going to end up in a homeless shelter when I got furloughed during the pandemic, because I was that petrified. And yet still, I did not go to anyone else for help. I got through it by myself. So I just don't get people like Dylan who are so used to that kind of like sheltered lifestyle. It just blows my mind how you could ever think that you'll always be okay, because I've never had that mindset, besides if it's with a lot of hard work and determination from myself alone. Dylan's best friend being the most toxic person I think I've ever read in a book ever. The sexualization of women. It is abundant in this book, not just with Addie, but also with Grace too. Did anyone pick that up? Dylan and Marcus both fucking the same woman and then running around the globe trying to find her while she's also fucking other people. And then like Addie's sister, who's just trying to like breast pump, but like the breast pumping was every second page. And surely, I mean, I don't know anything about breastfeeding yet because I'm not there, but surely you do not need to breast pump that bloody much over a period of a weekend. It was all just very excessive. Not even the stalker element in this book, like the only kind of seemingly saving grace that this book could have offered me, was enough to save it. The stalker was an absolute wet wipe. Rodney, what was the point in his part in this book? It made, there was nothing in it. I know this probably sounds weird, but yes, I will pick up another book by Beth O'Leary because I enjoyed the flat share, and from reading a lot of other people's reviews on Goodreads, many people felt the same way about this book that I did. So maybe this one was just a dud. I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars, and I think that's quite generous. And then I read Thank You for Listening by Julia Whelan, which I just found on Audible. I'd heard nothing about it. I was on my way to buy a different book on Audible, and the cover caught my eye, and then the premise sounded really good. So this is a book about this girl called Swanee, and she used to be this starlet on film sets, but after some tragic accident, she kind of has decided to hide behind the booth of audiobooks. So she just literally goes into a sound booth and now records. She's only got one eye, she's got an eye patch on, and she's become very successful in her new role in life. She's considered one of the best audiobook narrators there is. However, since her accident, she's kind of become quite cynical. She doesn't like to do anything with romance books anymore, but then one of the world's most beloved romance writers has asked her to narrate one of his audiobooks, and she's like, oh, fine, whatever. So she does, because she kind of is in a tight spot with money. Her grandmother is not in very good health, so she needs to get some more money to help her granny out. And that's where she develops a bit of a saucy romance with the male lead. Right off the bat, I was very surprised at how sexual this book was, even more so than The Roadtrip by Beth O'Leary. What I loved about this book was getting the insight into the world of audiobook narration. It's something I don't know much about. I have done voiceover work in the past for freelancing, and I absolutely loved it. So yeah, I really enjoyed that aspect. I found it really fascinating. But the story dragged a lot. I just feel like it could have been a much shorter, bite-sized book. The whole backstory of Swanee's grandmother developing dementia was really heartbreaking to read for me. It gave me a lot of feels. The fact that the main character has this disfigurement, she's not like the perfect girl next door that we tend to read about in books, I really appreciated that aspect as well. You know, it wasn't like we're following this plain Jane that some handsome stranger just sees this like untapped beauty in and then whisks her off to his mansion, or this like girl next door who's just seemingly perfect. We're not reading about one of those kind of characters. It was quite unique, and I liked that. Oddly, I found myself a lot more invested in Swanee and her grandmother's backstory, their relationship, than I did with Swanee and the love interest in this book. I think a lot of this book I just found myself losing interest. I just found the book quite dull. There was a lot happening, but nothing really captured my attention. The whole backstory of her strange relationship with her father, or the friend that kind of sailed on into like, having this really successful career in the film industry while she's now, you know, kind of just doing audiobooks, and all those things could have been touched upon more, but they just weren't. I also just found that the author using such bizarre names quite irritating, and that's saying something because, I mean, Colleen Hoover, one of my favourite authors, she's like the queen of finding weird and bizarre names. But, I mean, Swanee in itself is a bit odd, and then the fact that the grandmother is called Blah Blah. I know that it's because when Swanee was a kid, she couldn't pronounce Blah Blah's name properly, and it's just stuck, but I don't know, it just felt, especially because it was an audiobook, every time she'd say Blah Blah, I was like, really? I know that I'm in the minority here. A lot of people love this book. I think many people just tell me, Jade, you've tried contemporary romances, maybe it's just time to stick with your much beloved thrillers. But I'm enjoying trying different books and kind of having that bit of a break from the thriller genre. But this book just did not do it for me. It was another 2 out of 5 stars. I have read more throughout August, but I will leave that for part 1 of this video because I've got a couple more that I will talk to you about next time. Let me know if you read anything nice throughout August, and if I have persuaded you to read any of these or not to read any of these. I knew that my ranting, raving reviews would be back. They always are. I can be quite harsh, can't I? At least I'm honest. Chat to you all next time. Bye.